Hey guys, this is Tyler. We're at the end of May here, and I want to discuss here where I see the future of Gen Z dating going and the predicament for relationships among this demographic. Okay, so for the millennial guys, especially, we've taken a pretty hard hit when it comes to relationships, and the prospect of marriage is becoming less and less of something that most guys see in their future, and for many reasons, whether that's voluntary or involuntary. We're also seeing that the older millennial females, women, are hitting an age where they're unable to have children now. They're reaching middle age, or they already have reached middle age. It's very interesting to see kind of what the psychological effects have been. It's massive, honestly, on this generation. I mean, we look at depression and the behavioral sciences here, and many of these women have exhibited what I would have predicted would happen following a very unconventional lifestyle. I mean, when we look at the way in which a lot of people live now, especially women, is worse than people were living in the medieval times. It's worse than actually some animal groups when you think about it. And this is where we're at in society. What I also see is that, as we've seen a lot with the millennials, it's mostly concentrated, the demographic of people that are having children. It tends to be more the lower classes. I mean, I see interviews all the time with guys that have just gotten out of prison, were in prison. Some are drug addicts or war, and they'll have like 2, 3, 4 kids. And then I'll see guys that are legit that have been living straight lifestyles and they don't have any. Some have never had a girlfriend. And this really kind of illustrates the situation we're at in our society. And unfortunately, this is kind of a problem worldwide. This isn't just in the US. This is, I think, becoming more common around the world. It shows you the times we're living in. As I said, society seems to be regressing. But with that stated, when we look at, like, with Gen Z right now, big difference of them compared to millennials is that, like, the older millennials were going into a much better economic environment when they would have been, like, finishing university. If you do the early 2000s, quite different the environment at that time compared to now. And now when we look at a lot of these millennials, they don't have like any kind of job, or it's just like these low paying jobs that are accessible to them. Obviously, the proliferation of dating apps is more powerful than ever before. That's a huge factor, but I think it's important to go back to the economics in the economic environment. When we look at the fact that many Gen Z people cannot afford to live on their own, let alone millennials. Many millennials can't even live with a roommate. They can't afford that in America. It's just insane, honestly, the situation. I also see that, as we've seen, the wealth stratification, I'm not a socialist, mind you, but I see the gap increasing in the coming years as there's more automation, there's more machine learning driven environments. This is going to have a very devastating effect on the economy, or on people, especially average people. And as I mentioned before, when it's most of the lower classes that are having much of the children, I see the same thing here in Estonia. It tends to be kind of dumber people that have more of the kids. This is a huge problem, though, when you think that a lot of our society economies are driven by intelligence. This is what where a lot of the better paying jobs and opportunities are. But then the people that are having kids more than ever before are the dumber people. Often they're in the lower classes. Those two things often go hand in hand. This is terrible, and where the society's going towards. Now, with the Gen Z, though, the overall social environment for Gen Z is, for the latter half of millennials, is not great when it comes to the prospect of especially for men, that a girl, a woman will remain loyal to them. And a thought occurred to me recently when I think about like the one of the biggest differences between Gen Z, especially to like the older millennials, some younger millennials, is that we were being brought up mostly by baby boomer parents, and like the older Gen Y people by mostly baby boomers. And there was this sense of accountability. I think anyone who can who's been raised by boomer parents can relate to this, that if you started something, often the parent expected you to finish. Whatever you started, you were finishing. If you started a sport you didn't like, if you were like doing soccer, you had to finish. If you started an instrument, you played the trumpet, you hated it, you still had to go for the like 6 months or a year and see it until completion. I don't see this mentality as much when I look at the Gen Y and how their mindset with raising kids wasn't completing something until the end. In this same example, I think can be applied to relationships, to the whole relationship environment everywhere. This is a huge problem that couples, especially women here, will not see these relationships all the way through. They just quit basically. There's no kind of warning or anything, indication, or no kind of willingness to be resilient and simply to push through. Whatever it is, it's just like on a whim, they just quit. This is the mindset of the young generations now, especially women. I think a lot of this was due to the upbringing, and as more of these people come to age, they're going to see this trend. It's actually the same problem also in the work environment. I've spoken to people and also seen interviews. Same problem. People will quit. Rate at which young people quit or they don't give any warning is quite high now. This lack of completion is a huge issue. This is why a lot of guys also had just stopped dating or marriage, whatever it is. Because like a long time ago, people that are older here can relate to this. Typically there was some kind of pre-indicator that like a relationship would be ending or that there were problems. And there was more willingness to stick together and try to manage it, try to get through these difficult periods. But unfortunately now this isn't the case. And this is another interesting thing. Anyone who's been at least somewhat successful knows that in life or like in business, for example, the guy that can stick their head down and just simply grind through, no matter how difficult, they will just grind through those tough periods, will be the winner often. That will be the winner in many cases. The guy that can just grind through these situations. And I mean, in the areas where I've had success, this is absolutely the case. I just stuck down my head and I just grinded like crazy and was able to finish and to be a winner, essentially. And this is, I think, the same analogy with relationships. This mindset, though, doesn't exist anymore. There's also a misunderstanding, I think, too, what guys think is what's considered love, what's considered like romance, of course, was a noble concept, and this was a concept created by men. Romance was not a concept created by women, contrary to what many people probably think nowadays. If you read old manuscripts or old books from like the medieval era, the concept of romance was practiced mostly by higher class, by nobility. Most of the like peasant class population, this was a foreign concept. They did not know what the concept of romance was. And when we look at the world around us, it's essentially the peasant societies, the peasant cultures that are flourishing. And so is it any wonder why this concept doesn't really exist nowadays? It's reflective in the demographics. Anyone who's watched Stefan Molyneux, famous Canadian podcaster, has talked about this. Demographics is absolutely everything in a society. This is obviously what we see today. What happens, and this is a problem that I had when I was younger, is that what I thought was love, the definition of love for like a parent to child or child to parent, or to siblings is very different than what is classified as love between couples. And I almost don't even see it as love. It's more just like needs. It's like needs and demands. It's very primal nowadays, it seems like. And maybe it was always this way. It's more like, what needs do you have that are demanded, essentially. Then when you think of the Eros, this was the Greek god with like eroticism. I think this concept does not tie into what many people viewed as love. I think this kind of ties into a more primal state of nature. This is important that guys understand this, because it's not really like love at the end of the day. It's more of what, like, needs and demands. And especially as we go to this more primitive environment in the world that we're living, it seems to be becoming more primitive. As I said before, more of the peasant populations are flourishing, and this is where a lot of the kids are being born from. If we look at, like, in the US and Canada, the non-white demographic for Gen Z is growing much quicker than the white populations, white European populations. And I think this will continue to a degree until the economics became so poor. And maybe then it would reverse. I don't know then if that would be enough, though, because many of those people will still continue having kids even when it becomes really difficult. Where I see Gen Z, like, I don't even think the dating apps, so I think those actually will start to go down in popularity. Social media is still fairly common for couples to meet, but as we know, dating apps aren't really working for the majority, for like 80 or 90% of people, for younger guys. And I can't encourage people enough to stop giving attention to women on social media, on dating apps, any of this stuff. Let them give you the attention. That's my philosophy. I let them give me the attention if any so desire. So that would obviously also lower the amount of simp behavior that we see happening around us. But the other problem too is a lot more guys than ever too are being raised by mostly in female-led environments. And like, I just spoke recently about the mommy matriarchy governments that are becoming more common around the world. And it also goes parallel with, like, the home environment. We see a lot of the home environment becoming more mommy-led environments, and it's no wonder why these guys end up becoming simps, because they don't understand how to be a proper man. And this is what plays out, and especially within certain demographics, as the simp behavior is so strong, it just gets worse. For any guys who are Gen Z, if they do want to know, like, what they should do, how they should live, if I were to give some basic advice, first is just, as cliche as it is, focus on yourself, focus on your ambitions and your goals in life. Because what you'll find, like, a lot of millennial guys have found this, is that many millennial guys have been let down hugely. I know, like, my brother, friends of mine and my brother who were in, like, very long relationships, and then out of the blue their girlfriends broke up, committed a lot of time with these gals, like, in their late 20s. So you can't put too much effort into that nowadays, because, as I was saying, they will just flip on a switch, or the switch will flip, like, overnight, and then it will be done. The relationship will be over. And so stick with whatever your desires are, your goals in life. Also, you can't really ever think that a woman really cares about you. Don't think that they have your best interest, that they're going to be there for you. So you have to get yourself in a state of mind where you see them as not being there for any reason. That's a good way to think about it. They have no obligations to men anymore, and that's how you have to think. You'll feel better over time. It'll become more ingrained, and you'll just feel better. You'll feel more positive, and you won't need any kind of relationship to make you feel better.